Hi, my name is Mark Von Bullock. Don't encourage this. From Oxford, Ohio, just outside the city of Cincinnati, you're listening to Don't Encourage This, a series of interviews and conversations with artists, creatives, interfaith voices, and nerds. I am your host, Mark Von Bullock. I'm a minister in the Presbyterian Church USA. This episode, I want to introduce you to one of the premier magicians in the country and a really nice guy, Doc Eason. Doc Eason is a bar magician, which is exactly what it sounds like. Doc was the bartender at the legendary Tower Magic Comedy Bar in Snowmass Village, Colorado, famously owned by the late great recording artist John Denver, for almost 30 years. But Doc is not just any bartender. He also happens to be one of the greatest close-up magicians in the country. He is world-renowned in the magic community. He performs regularly at the legendary Magic Castle in Hollywood. He has received numerous awards from the Academy of Magical Arts, including Close-Up Magician of the Year, which he has won twice, Lecturer of the Year, which he has also won twice, and the WC Fields Magic Bartender of the Year. He has been recognized as an honorary professional member of the Magic Circle of London as, and now I'm quoting from them, one respected by so many and who has contributed so much to the world of magic. Doc still tours all over the country and around the world, performing corporate events, industrial trade shows, country club gatherings, weddings, and a few divorces, according to his website. Okay. And all manner of private affairs. He's made several television appearances, and for the past 2 decades at least, he has been the resident magician at the Artisan restaurant in the Stonebridge Inn in Snowmass Village, Colorado. He has written a new book, a memoir entitled Cocktails and Doctales, which is available at doceason.com. That's DOCEASON.com. This was a really interesting conversation. I first became aware of Doc Eason probably about 10 or 15 years ago. I've been a fan of his for a long time. Doc is a comedy magician. His show is very funny, and he offers audiences a very down-home style of Rocky Mountain magic. So when I was first thinking about reaching out to Doc Eason about coming on this show, I actually was not aware that he had written a new book. Now, I should reiterate, this is not a book of magic tricks. Doc's book is a memoir, the story of his life performing night after night in Colorado, a sort of behind-the-scenes look at that kind of life in this little corner of show business. And I will admit that at first I thought, okay, I'll take a look at this book, I'll jot down some notes, we'll make time for it in the interview, we'll do the plug, and then I'll get back to asking him the questions that I want to ask him about. I figured I would pick it up and put it down and get through it over the course of a week or so, and then we'd set up time to do a Zoom call. What I didn't expect was that about halfway through reading this book, I realized that I was in the middle of reading one of my new, very favorite books about magic. Now, let me explain what I mean by that and why I say that. I love magic. I have dabbled a bit here and there in some amateur magicianship myself over the years, and I've read my fair share of books about magic. They generally suck. 9 times out of 10, they're just books that are written to teach you a dozen magic tricks or so, which is fine if you're first getting started and interested in learning magic. But I don't really have much interest in those kinds of books as an adult. I've always been more interested in books that talk about magic as an art form and why it might mean something, or if it has any deeper meaning as an art form at all. That is the topic that I'm more interested in, and there are a few books written by magicians that really think about that or talk about that. And quite frankly, the few books that are out there, those kind of books tend to sound more like they were written by a magician who's desperately trying to convince you that he's not just some socially awkward dork making balloon animals at your kid's birthday party, And any kind of philosophical thoughts that they finally get around to wind up sounding more like eye-rolling Hallmark card platitudes than real wisdom or insight. There are really only 2 books about magic that I have read over the years that I felt actually touched on something resembling real, genuine, deeper meaning behind magic as an art form. The first book is called Tangled Web by Eric Mead, who is one of the finest magicians in the world today, and as it just so happens, is also a former acolyte and apprentice of my guest this episode. That book is no longer in print, and I happen to have a copy of it on my shelf in my office at the church. We'll talk about that a little bit during this conversation. So, given that, I suppose it shouldn't come as much surprise that the second book is Cocktails and Docktails by Doc Eason. For years, I thought that first book, Tangled Web, was the only book that really got close to what real meaning magic has in the world, if it has any meaning at all. But after reading Doc Eason's new book, I think Doc, in the writing of this memoir, may have just about nailed it. They're both extraordinary books. They come at this particular topic from slightly different perspectives, slightly different angles, and they each have unique insights of their own. But I was thrilled to pick up a book that actually seemed like it knew what it was talking about when it came to that kind of stuff. And that made me even more excited to get to talk to Doc Eason about this on my podcast and nerd out about it with him. Now, like I said, the book is a memoir of insights and misadventures from over 40 years of performing for people night after night in a very intimate setting. Some of the stories in the book are funny, some are shocking, some are terrifying, and some are surprising and at times even deeply moving. When you meet people from all walks of life, you also realize that every person who walks into that bar or that performance space has a different story, and you never know what any given audience member may be silently carrying in their life, in their hearts, in their minds when they walk into that space with you. During our conversation, Doc describes encounters with audience members that have almost touched on something resembling chaplaincy or pastoral care. Doc is also no stranger to tragedy in his own life. In 2021, Doc's son, Ryan, tragically took his own life. The closing chapters of Doc's book are dedicated to his son, and he writes a very moving tribute in his memory. Now, before I play this conversation with Doc Eason, I want to share with you that before we started recording, Doc had shared with me over the course of a couple of conversations we'd had that he has been learning how to navigate this grief space, and that this was a topic that he might have some interest in discussing together during our conversation, during the podcast. So during this interview, we do make some time towards the end of the conversation to talk a little bit about that and what that has looked like for him. I want you, the audience, to be aware of that before we listen to this conversation together. And I also want to say that personally, I felt very moved and very honored that he invited me into a conversation like that with him. We also talk about a variety of other topics, such as his relationship with John Denver, the legendary recording artist. Doc shares some wonderful stories about John Denver in his book, and he shares some stories with us during this conversation as well. He also shares a few hilarious stories about how when you perform night after night in a bar, of all places, you just never know what's going to happen, for better or for worse. This was just a really fascinating conversation. Doc is a very interesting guy. He's an incredibly talented performer and storyteller. He's one of the best magicians in the world. I was thrilled to get to talk to him. It's always exciting when a podcast like this offers an excuse to talk to someone that I think is a magic icon, and Doc Eason certainly is one of the best. Let's chat with the Doc. Doc, thank you so much for making time to speak with us. It's such an honor and such a thrill to get to talk to you.
Well, I'm thrilled that you care enough about it to call me up and say, let's talk. So I don't get too many calls from Presbyterian ministers.
I guess not. I wonder how many people in the magic community get regular calls from Presbyterian clergy. Probably very few.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, Doc, you've got a new book out called Cocktails and Doc Tales, and you and I have been chatting for a couple of weeks now about this book. I read the book, and I just absolutely loved it. I devoured it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this book and what this book means and what it's about. Before we get into it, because I know some of the folks who may be listening to this show may be other Presbyterian clergy. Some folks we may have some magicians listening. And so I wanted to just let folks know this is not a book of magic tricks. This is not a book that's teaching magicians how to perform magic. This is really a memoir of your life and your career performing bar magic. And I was wondering if you could explain to some of us who don't know, what is bar magic?
Well, simply it's magic performed in the bar. But there's a lot of variation on that. Does the magician stay behind the bar as you work the crowd? Is he actually pouring drinks? There's a lot of different variations. What happens if you come out from behind the bar? And are you still working the bar area? Yes. But bar magic, in my mind, is up close, personal, and it happens, right there in front of you. If you recall, my mentor, Bob Sheets, when he first wandered into this bar, that's another long story, but there's a guy behind the bar doing bar magic? What does bar magic mean? Actually, Bob was standing behind the bar when I asked the question, and he said, the guy will be here any minute. Bob is the master of the undersell, starts shuffling the deck of cards, and they go all over the place. And this guy can't even open a car door, what's he doing card tricks? And so he proceeded to take me apart, figuratively speaking. And I was just blown away by stuff that happened right in front of you. By definition, if it's in a bar, it's in a closed situation. It's not like a room full of 200 people. You're dealing with 5-6 people at a time, but maybe some people around the outside.
So it's a very intimate form of magic.
Very intimate, and I advise people to watch very carefully because your job is to follow this. Of course, I get them to lead them down the garden path, and when I get them where I want to, I turn the hose on them. So it's a specialized type of magic. It's a combination of parlor, comedy magic. Parlor meaning 50, 60 people, but perhaps in a room. There's a lot of variation in terms of what magic bar is, but I think you nailed it. It's intimate. It's right here. Follow this, hold this, touch this, move this over here, and so that they all get to do it. And that's what impressed me the most when Sheets took me apart that very first night I met him. It happens right here in front of you. So you have to pay attention to what's going on. And that's not easy to do when all this other magic is happening and this other stuff is happening. So it's especially a fun deal. And most people don't see this kind of magic. You see it on television. America's Got Talent.
Right.
Got Talent. When it happens right in front of you, it's much more impactful. I was watching him every minute, and he still somehow did this thing. It also, being in the resort area, the crowd turns over.
Yeah.
The best way to learn how to do magic is to just do it a bunch over and over and over and over again. Well, pretty soon your wife, kids get tired of it, and they don't want to see anymore, right? And so magic like I perform in a resort area where people come back year after year. For instance, I just came back from South Carolina where I did a surprise 50th wedding anniversary for people who have been coming out to Snowmass for, 40 years. And I watched the kids grow up. And now the kids call me and say, hey, you suppose you could come and entertain at, we just love you and love what you do. So it's more, my byline is it's more than magic. It's Doc.
Yeah.
And it's a place for personality to shine through. And the other thing is that, again, it's not trick after trick after trick after trick. It's like,
right.
Hey, boom, I blew your mind. Now, where were you from again? Columbus. Oh my God, they named your room after the discovery, or whatever. But you make a conversation about somebody's.
Yes.
Where they're from, how to spell your name. Mark, is that M-A-R-C? Is it a C or a K? I think people would much rather talk about themselves than watch some fella do magic card tricks until they get into it, and then they realize that this is something special. And so if you're doing it in downtown Columbus, for example, at the little corner bar there, George and Martha come in every Friday afternoon and kick off the weekend. And they're there every week. So
yeah,
that makes you run back to the magic store and buy this new thing and then go out and then test it. Best thing to do is to just do it over and over and over again. one of the things that Sheets did, we would take an occasional road trips, and he would just, he's like a dog with a rope toy, he's just like,
I imagine when you're performing that close to somebody, one of the challenges, of course, is that the person you're performing for is watching that much more closely. But I would imagine that when you're right on top of someone, you can get away with a lot more too, with like you said, misdirection and conversation.
I was this close. Oh yeah, well then that's just, you're not going to get it then. You need to widen your field of vision there, and maybe you might catch something going. But again, I saw him do that. Well, did you see this? No. Okay, well there it is. So there's a lot of improv, at least the way I work. Talk about the people, and eventually do a trick, and that'll blow their minds. So that's my philosophy. You want to get real good at it, do it. Go to a place where you do it. The crowd changes almost daily, and then at the end of the week, the whole crowd changes and comes back in, and a whole new crowd. So it's fun.
There's a trick that you've done. I saw this on YouTube, Doc. I have some interest in magic. I know a little bit about magic. I can't do what you do, but I know just enough to know just a little bit. I was watching.
That's dangerous.
That's what Matt King said. But I was watching a YouTube video of you performing bar magic for somebody, and I'm watching very close. And of course, it's YouTube, which isn't the same as being there in person, of course. But you were doing this trick with somebody. It was a pick a card trick, and da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, you said, "Is this your card?" And they're like, "No, that's not my card." And then you said something like, "Oh, it must be under your drink." And they look down, and it's underneath their glass. And I'm watching the video. I'm like, wait a minute, how the hell did it get there? And then I went back and watched it again. And the second time, I got so distracted in like you joking around, and I stopped paying attention to the trend. It fooled me twice in a row. So
right.
You can get away with that stuff when you're performing that intimately with somebody.
That's right. And then when they go home back to Columbus or wherever they're from, they got to tell all their friends, we saw this magician that, really you saw a magician. One of the early backup bartenders was also a columnist for the Aspen Times. And he said, most people that come into the bar think that magic is lame. And it's
sure.
Many times it is.
Fair.
I'm not pointing any fingers anywhere, but, you want to tickle them a little bit and make them want more.
Yeah.
It's a memorable experience, basically, watching magic that close.
As I was reading your book, Cocktails and Docktails, one of the things that I really appreciated about your book, I've read a number of different magic books, and a lot of different magic books do sort of just teach you a variety of different tricks, and then you walk away saying, okay, now I can do some little card trick or whatever. But I also have an interest in books that talk about magic kind of more philosophically, like what does it mean and what does it really offer people beyond just some light entertainment. When I was in seminary, I would buy magic books hoping to learn some insight into exactly that topic. And one of my favorite books about that topic is a book by a friend of yours, Eric Mead. It's a book called Tangled Web. And he talked about how magic could be used as a form of communicating ideas rather than just light entertainment.
Yes,
I thought, oh, that's such a great... And he lists a number of examples. Like Penn and Teller have this great routine where they burn an American flag and then it comes back and it turns into this meditation about what does freedom mean and all these wonderful things. But when I was reading your book, I really didn't know what to expect from this book. I wasn't sure if this was... am I just going to get in for some fun stories about working behind the bar? I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. What I was so impressed by and actually moved by was that you kind of take that idea further and say magic can communicate ideas, but on an even deeper level, it's about memories, it's about relationships, it's about the connection with the person that you're making, hopefully in that intimate way. And I loved the way that you thought about that and talked about that in this book. It made this really quickly one of my favorite books about magic, actually.
Oh, thanks. It's worth repeating the first chapter of the book. It's very short, and I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to, because I wrote it, I know what it says. But it was 10 o'clock on a snowy Snowmass evening, and the crowd was packed, and it was wonderful. And I finished up, and I went down to get more to help make some drinks and get caught up on the thing, because that's the other part of bar magic. Hey, you're almost empty. How about another one?
Oh yeah, you are still working the bar. You still got to sell drinks and make money for the
right. So I'm down there, and there's a whole slew of tickets, and I'm working as fast as I can. And a lady came up, and I'm working away, and I glance at her, and she had a very soft smile and was looking at me. I said, "Can I help you with anything?" She said, I just want you to know that, and as I focused on her, I noticed that she didn't have any hair. She had a bandana on, and her complexion was kind of grayish. She looked like a chemo person.
Oh, yes.
And so as I'm making it, I look at her and I notice that she doesn't look at all well. And I said, is there anything I can help you with? She said, I just want you to know that I have terminal cancer. I didn't want to come here tonight. I didn't want to come on this vacation. But they dragged me here to this bar, and I just want you to know that I laugh more than I have in months, and right now I don't hurt.
Oh, my God.
Thank you. And she spins on her heel and goes out the door into the night. I never saw her again. But it was just, like, holy cow, wait a second.
Oh, my God. My
comedic banter, that I put on the bar made this woman pain go away.
Yeah.
When she laid that on me, I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I went into the side room where it was quiet, and I just sort of had to chew on what had just happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was one of the many epiphanies that I had along the way. But that one struck me, and I went, oh, that's what's going on here. It's not just some guy doing magic tricks. We're connecting on a much deeper, and you call it a much deeper level. That's where the magic happens, when you grab somebody's attention, and it's fulfilling, especially when you attack it this way. Now, a lot of magicians don't play it the same way I do. They're playing it to pick up that blonde on the end of the counter or whatever,
Yeah.
It's in a bar situation, so there's any number of things that can go wrong there.
Sure.
But and there's a couple of, now in retrospect, very funny stories that happened out of the thing. The night the guy brought the gun in the bar.
Oh my gosh, that chapter was terrifying. I was on the edge of my seat reading that. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Sounds awful.
So some guys play it differently than I do. I'm fully aware of the fact. And now, I've been doing this for 47 years. I came out here to Snowmass to visit some friends that ran a Tower restaurant, partners with John Denver. I just looked around and went, boy, this sure beats the hell out of San Jose, California. I think I want to, I'm going to stay here for a while and see what happens. Now, I didn't know any magic. That's the other thing. I was 30 years old when I came out here.
Right.
I didn't know any magic. I would stop and watch magicians on the street or watch the TV specials, Copperfield, etc.
Sure.
But to me, magic was always a hobby. When I watched Sheets work the bar, the tip jar was overflowing. The drinks were sailing back and forth. I was like, wow, what's going on here? This is
a little more than just a hobby for this guy.
Yeah, exactly. He was a master entertainer. So that's the way I play it. This is what you got to do for bar magic. You got your own personality, you got your own thing, but there's a lot of stuff to think about beyond, does that card go on the top or the bottom?
Right. I'm sure you still got to think about that stuff too, but that can't be the only thing you're thinking about if you're going to do this well.
Yeah, exactly. And working in a bar, it has its own risk. The ever-present alcohol right there, so
That's true.
You sort of have to be careful, on what's going on, and that in that respect.
If you're performing close-up at the Magic Castle, for example, I should explain for folks listening. So the Magic Castle, it's an exclusive club in Hollywood for magicians. It's not open to the public, but if you know somebody or can get invited to go, or if you're a magician, I suppose, it's where you can go to see world-class magicians perform stage magic, close-up magic, parlor magic, you name it, they do it. And I know you've performed there many times, but at the Magic Castle, even the most world-class performer probably doesn't have to worry about potentially performing for a room full of drunks every night.
Right.
Whereas if you're doing bar magic, that's exactly the kind of crowd management you got to be thinking about.
Right. My ideal audience is, a couple of drinks, boy, out here, we're gonna sail away. But I also say, well, what do you do about hecklers? Well, I have a whole theory about hecklers. There's a number of levels of drunkenness. First, with a cocktail, you become handsome.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Second one, you become witty and charming. After the third drink, it's like screw dinner. Let's have another drink, and then you become invisible, and then you become bulletproof. Okay, I mean bulletproof. You can walk across a lane of traffic and not get hit. So above average intelligence, you're just a little bit drunk. That's my ideal audience.
You mentioned that you got into magic a little bit later in adulthood, in your 30s, I think you said, and this is
30 years old.
Yeah, and this is very interesting to me because, as you kind of alluded, a lot of magicians get into magic the same way that any 9-year-old gets into magic, which is that when they're a little kid, maybe their parent buys them like a magic kit of tricks. They learn a couple tricks, they get hooked into it, and then, some of us maybe grow out of it, but the professional magicians just like, no, I want to get better and better and better and better and better and better, and then away they go. But you You didn't get into it until much, much, much later in life. Like you said, around 30 years old, which is unusual. I have to imagine that must give you a very unique perspective on magic as an industry, as an art form, as a community. How has this perspective been both an advantage and a challenge for you as a performer?
Well, for the first 30 years of my life, I was experimenting, not experimenting, that's the wrong phrase, but I was gaining the experience of who I am. By 30 years old, I got a sort of an idea of who I am and what's going on.
Sure.
All of these, working in the health food store, working in a health food bar, making smoothies and nature burgers and things like that. But it allowed me what I come to, is a rapport that you establish at a lunch counter. Everything okay over here? Can I get you more smoothie? Can I get you, how about some dessert? Working the bar, there's a lot of facets to go into it. We sort of alluded to the fact that, it's a personality piece. So my personality had been fairly well formed. Now I run into this serendipitous. The serendipity should be the name of this book, because a lot of stuff that happened serendipitously without my trying it. We had a phrase in our family: leap and the net will appear. You sort of pick up the landing gear and kind of go along and what's presenting itself to you. And then you say, well, maybe I'll try this, or maybe I'll try that. So by the time I was 30, I knew how to deal with people. What's your name and where are you from and all that other stuff that goes along with it. I think that's the other thing about it. There's a lot of guys go, hey, I got a place. I'm going to do all my tricks that I can. And one trick, chat with them a little bit, maybe then pull out another one, whatever. Now, that being said, I'm sort of like the tomfoolery, the Tom Mullica situation, where he presented a show.
Yeah, sure.
Happened to be in a bar, but he was, again, his quickness, he was a real master showman.
Yeah, sure.
And that's not easy to take what he does and put it on, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. But bar magic gave me the opportunity to hone these skills that I was learning, that I didn't know where I was going to go with it. I finally got out of the health food business because I got tired of opening the door at 9, closing the door at 9, the routine of it all.
Yeah.
When I got to be 30, that's when my pal Jake and I said, let's go across the country on our motorcycles and visit our friends around the Tower Restaurant with John Denver. That's another angle of my story that nobody else has got, basically. But, how did a skinny kid from Naugatuck, Connecticut, end up flying in John Denver's biplane?
Yeah, that was a great story in the book. Also slightly terrifying.
Yes, very terrifying. I was wondering what I got into here. John Denver was a complex character, but he was, in my mind, and any interactions that we had, which were not a lot, but we would cross paths periodically. He's one of the most genuine people I've ever met. And I think I talked to a little bit about the performance lesson that John gave me.
Well, we should back up a minute just to explain to folks who don't know. You did have quite a relationship with John Denver. What was John Denver's relationship with the Tower Comedy Bar?
Aspen in the early 70s was a very special place. In the Snowmass Mall area, there was a couple of restaurants. One of them was the Refectory, which is a steakhouse chain. And my buddies from the West Coast all went to San Jose State together, and I kind of knew some of the people there. He knew the Crow, Paul, and Michael. Those are the three partners in the Tower. And John was the money guy behind it. So it's just not like he used to hang around and do the dishes, In fact, his visits to the Tower were always special, but they weren't very frequent.
He had a few other things to do with his time, like touring and making,
oh God, yes, yeah,
platinum selling albums and
making, oh God, and doing the movie. And he was a superstar.
Yeah.
And so I remember at one point in Las Vegas, where I was walking down a hallway and a guy comes out of the showroom. We're like almost nose to nose, and it's Siegfried.
From Siegfried and Roy.
I caught my breath. I stopped, and he was on his way somewhere else. But I stopped and went, "Wait a minute, that was Siegfried." And a couple other stars. With Chevy Chase was a big fan of the place, so he'd walk in the bar. Boy, you could just the energy was palpable.
Oh, I bet.
We always had fun when John showed up. It was 29 years at the Tower before it shut down. I'd say half a dozen times he'd show up and we banner. Is he going to play the guitar? I said, no. This is a magic bar. The music bar's down there. But whatever, whatever.
That's a good line.
Yeah, but it was as I said, it was always a thrill when he was there.
Yeah,
my head would snap, and then I go, oh, that's right. It's just John. It's okay. I can relate the story about the performance thing. He came in one afternoon during après ski, and I looked down at the service end where he was standing, waiting to get a beer. I just said, "Hey, John, I've been working on some stuff here. Come on over and take a look at this." I said, "I'll be right there. Let me get a beer." So I'm working this crowd, and I'm conscious that John is in the room, and I wanted to show him what I was doing. And he walked right past the group I was working for, and all the way up to the right hand side, and in the corner over there. And he said at the corner, "Now he can't see what I'm doing." And I was like put out. I want to show you what's going on.
Yeah, sure.
He wasn't having it. He was at the far end, nursing his beer and watching, but he wasn't watching me. He was watching the crowd. What was I doing to the crowd?
Oh.
And if anybody's ever been to a John Denver concert, there's a point at which he takes off the electric guitar and pulls out his this old guitar. I don't remember the songs he sang during that concert, but I remember the feeling I get.
Absolutely.
Maya Angelou said, people don't remember what you did or what you said. They remember how you made them feel.
And how the crowd felt together, experiencing it as a collective.
Exactly. It's a mini community there. And again, with the nature of the ski resort, there can be some grungy snowboarder out there sitting next to his grandmother. And, there's no age for what I was, the littles, I try to veer away from doing little, the kids will love it. They're only 4. Oh, no.
Oh, man, I just did, I hesitate to call it a magic show. That's really pushing it. But I was invited by someone that I know who's a preschool teacher to come visit their class and do magic tricks for about 10 minutes. And it's almost, you have to keep it real small and it's almost impossible to perform for kids that little, I think, because they're just...
The world is magical at that point.
Yeah,
look at my hand. Boom, there's a tube of toothpaste in my hand. I'm like, right?
Yes.
It's...
Like once they get to like 8 or 9, then you can kind of start to play with them a little bit. But at 4,
absolutely.
It's just shapes and numbers and colors.
This is a waste of time and energy, So anyway, back to the superstar syndrome. It was always a treat to see John in the bar, and I wasn't close with him. I wouldn't say that, but he, we'd pass each other on the street and he'd go, "Hey, Doc, hi, John." But then as we started to have children and things went on, one of the things that really, really impressed me was the fact that he remembered my kids' names.
Yes.
This is an international superstar. He plays in China and Japan and Africa and all over the world, in USSR. How's Mac doing? How's Ryan doing? How's Katie doing? This absolutely floored me. And my heart would skip a beat when he, as important a person as he is in the grand scheme of things, he remembered my kids' names.
Well, and that's something that really comes across in the book. I don't want to give away too much because I want people to get the book and read the book and enjoy it for themselves. But you share so many wonderful stories about John Denver in this book, and some of my favorite stories are the memories that you have of watching him interacting with your children, with your kids, and his natural ability to connect with kids and young people. That was so endearing to me. I mean, of course, his music is so special to me, and I love John Denver. I've got a couple of his vinyls and some digital stuff on my iPod, but just to read about how he connected with kids, and he seemed to genuinely love kids, that just made my heart sing while reading this book.
Yeah, well, he was a unique individual, and the real tragedy is that he was just turning the corner, and you remember him talking to. He used to have an office right in Basalt, where I am. He talked to one of his assistants and said, "I feel like I'm poised to make a major move." And the girl said, "You mean bigger than Rocky Mountain High?" He said, "Rocky Mountain High will pale in existence in my mind, because I've got this." He was into a creative time. It was so tragic that he on so many levels when anybody dies like that, but he just had so much more to give.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunately we aren't going to get that. And so, but. Like you, we have a John Denver station on Pandora, and we got and Jeannie, my wife, was on the camping trip where he composed and wrote Rocky Mountain High.
Holy moly!
Yeah, this was back in the late '60s, early '70s. The Perseid meteor showers happen in the same time every year in August. If you're away from the light pollution, you can see 100 shooting stars. and he saw it raining fire from the sky, Rocky Mountain High. Jeannie was among the 10 or 12 people that were all in John and Annie and Crow and Paul and Michael and all the gang, was there when he wrote the song.
He was present for history in the making right there.
Yeah, indeed. He was certainly a good pal, even though he wasn't a close pal, he was a great pal. And there's a few other stories in there about John.
You mentioned, just as a quick sidebar, the story about meeting Siegfried for the first time. It reminded me of, I had a similar experience, and you and I were chatting about this a couple days ago. Years ago, I was pulled on stage during a David Copperfield show. I think he came to perform in Boston, Massachusetts, I think. He was doing this trick. I can't remember exactly all the details of the trick, but he had a whole bunch of like beach balls were bouncing around the audience, and he was trying to get random people out of the crowd. And I caught one of the balls, and one of his assistants pulled me on stage, and they were setting up for, I think, to make a car appear. His assistants are guiding us, like, okay, you stand here. And I remember feeling very nervous about this because I was like, I don't want to be, you don't want to screw up whatever's about to happen on stage in front of like 6,000 people. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm going to stand here and do the thing. And then I look up, and 3 feet from my face is David Copperfield. And my brain just went, holy crap, there he is. He's just right there. And I like, it was very strange. I was like, hey, I could reach out and touch him. There he is. And then this thing happens where after a couple of seconds, you realize, oh, wait, he's just a guy. He's just a guy up here. He's up here just working. He's doing his job. He does this every night for like 50 different people. And this is just what he does. And that kind of, there's the initial shock and awe of like, oh, this famous person. And then they slowly turn into just another person in the room with you. But you kind of get that sense with John Denver. Like when the first time John Denver shows up in the book, I got really excited, like, oh, he's going to talk about John Denver. And then as the stories go on, he just becomes a character in your life. He becomes this special person who played a special, he becomes more than just the recording artist who's done all these great, he becomes someone who made an impact on you and your children and your family and your own career.
And thousands of other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent. I just wanted to.
No, but that's good. It backs up what I was saying.
Well, I want to talk about some of the other characters in this book. Bob Sheets, when you first saw bar magic for the first time at the Tower, he was the guy working the bar. Your introduction of Bob Sheets in the book is such a great story. I love that story so much. He is just such a funny character, and you just get the sense that he was just a marvel to watch. And that was the moment. I think that was the chapter when I really got hooked on your book. Because when I picked it up to read it, I was like, okay, I'm going to start reading it tonight, and I'll put it down, go to bed, and maybe I'll finish it later in the week. And the moment I got to that story, I was laughing so much, and I was like, nope, I'm going to finish this book tonight. This is it's too good. But you've encountered so many wonderful characters: Bob Sheets, John Denver, Crow Straka, this colorful ensemble of folks that played such an important role in your formation as a performer.
Yeah, again, the early 70s was a crazy time in the resort. I don't know how familiar you are with Hunter S. Thompson.
Oh, not as much as I should be.
Yeah, well, Crow was a lot like Hunter in that you enjoy reading the exploits of this guy, but you don't want to be standing next to him when it's doing it. It's like, and Crow was. You can edit this out if you want to, but at one point he was then Governor Dick Lamb, Lamm, and his wife were in Snowmass or something, and if somehow or another, I think John was there too, and so that was a connection. Come on in, we'll buy you dinner. While they're in there, wine steward's name was Woody, and so it turned out that Woody and Mrs. Governor Lamb went to the same school. And Crow just said, well, that just knocks my dick in the dirt. It's like, the governor's there. This is the governor.
That's awesome.
So I guess,
was that just who he was, or was he trying to make him laugh?
Or that's who he was.
Just no inner filter.
Outrageous character.
So funny. Well, but it does bring me to a question I wanted to ask you, because you have been performing this style of magic for decades, night after night after. I mean, you've got so many miles in the cockpit performing like this, Doc. And in the book, there's so many stories about the good, the bad, the ugly, the hilarious, the terrifying. Just, it's all there. And I just have to ask you, I mean, you have so much experience doing this. Does anything surprise you anymore? Or do you feel like at this point that you're prepared to handle just about any situation, or is there? You must have such an ability to adapt to anything, I would think.
Well, yeah, and that just comes from 47 years on the boards. And now, have I seen it all? I don't think so. I think there's probably something out there that I haven't seen yet. But pretty much the thing that surprises me, and not surprises me so much as it pleases me, I look up and the door swings open and in walks this couple or the guy or the gal or whatever they've been there, year after year after year, and they made a point of bringing their friends in to see the whole thing. My mind is rushing with all kinds of, should I tell that story? No.
Do what you want. If it's no good, I'll cut it out later. Just do what you want.
Maybe I'll exact on I take the whole passage out of it.
I just feel like you must be prepared for so many different kinds of situations when performing. I mean, you have encountered and dealt with so much in your experience doing this. You must just be like a Swiss Army knife of, oh, this happens? Okay, I'll do this. Oh, this went wrong? That's okay. I can go this way. And it just...
Yeah. Learning those pathways is part of the fun.
You tell a story in the book, and I don't want to give it away because I want people to read the book, and I think you'll know which story I'm talking about. You do talk about one particular trick in your show that was sort of like the grand finale.
Yes.
But it is a trick where, without giving too much away, it is a trick where things can go wrong depending on what happens.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked about how the more you performed that trick, you started to learn, like, okay, if that happens, this is plan B. Okay, if plan B doesn't work, here's plan C.
Right.
And I loved that because, first of all, it gives us a glimpse into the creative process, which you can only learn by just doing it in front of an audience. And it doesn't give away how the trick is done, but it does give us some insight on how a routine can evolve based on the circumstances or what mood the audience is in or just things just not working. And I love learning about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite heckler lines, and I started off at, we lost track of it, but the levels of drunkenness in hecklers.
Yes.
If you're witty and charming and handsome, then you're okay. We could play a little bit but when you get into the invisible and bulletproof situation there, this guy is going to disrupt the whole situation. So I have a number of different ways that I had to deal with that I've learned over the years. Absent the bar and leave out, go out, and let the crowd take care of them.
Yeah. That must be where some of your experience from the first 30 years of your life, learning how to deal with people, must come into play. Because, I've certainly seen magicians who are technically brilliant. In terms of like their sleight of hand, they can do the moves flawlessly, but they have no people skills. Either they're just awkward to talk to, or like the trick is just all they have. But those people skills are crucial, especially in a situation like this where the crowd can do so many unpredictable things. And you came into this with 30 years of kind of having a sense of how to handle and manage human beings.
Right.
On top of the magic stuff.
One of my favorite lines is that I know you think by your enthusiasm, I can see you think you're helping. You're not. And that oftentimes that's enough to come unless the guy is bulletproof. And then it's like, go call the police and have them come, and escort the guy out of there.
He needs to be Ubered home at that point.
Well, that's the beautiful part about Snowmass is that most people park their car and then walk everywhere. So we can get him knee crawling drunk and not have to worry about him trying to start his car. Nothing surprises me necessarily. It shocks me at first, but then, okay, this is what we're dealing with there.
Yeah.
Push the trick to the side. And I've got a couple of screw you kind of jokes. And that you can use your imagination, go down a little rougher road than that. Anyway, you just... I do have an arsenal of things that I can use. I can't recall any of them right this minute, but when I'm in the moment, these jokes, lines, and it all comes together. It just creates a memorable experience.
That's great. You've got a chapter in the book called Passing the Wand. One of the things that I really appreciated about the book is how generously you give credit to other magicians and other performers. You mentioned some of the other magicians who worked alongside you at the Tower Comedy Magic Bar. Alex Rangel Eric Mead, who we mentioned a little earlier, who of course now has gone on to become one of the finest magicians in the world.
Yeah.
And you talk about magicians who came before you, who have influenced you. Al Andrucci was a big influence on you. You tell a wonderful story about Frank Everhart. You give a shout out to Bill Malone. We were talking about Bill Malone the other day, one of my favorite magicians, along with Matt King. I wonder if you hear from younger magicians today who tell you that you have now influenced them in their own careers. I know you tell one such story in the book, but do you enjoy being a teacher and a mentor to other magicians, to other artists?
Absolutely. I've had some really excellent students, not the least of which is my son, Ryan. And another kid that, this is another tragedy here. And this is not in the book. It just happened, basically. There's one of the rich guys, of the many rich guys that live in Aspen, he used to throw a Boxing Day party, the day after Christmas. This guy would show up with his kid, and he was 10 years old at the time. He said, my kid wants to learn magic. His hands aren't big enough. He's too young, and, you get away, you bother me, kid. So the next year, he's a little taller, and, they're still not there. And finally, after 2 or 3 years of them pitching me on, just teach my son, I finally said, okay, I will. And by this time, he's like 13 or 14, bright kid, wonderful hands. And I'm, teaching them all kinds of different things and also turning them on. You'll understand here. I'm still a little verklempt about the whole thing. He graduated high school. This is like a month ago. He was the kind of student that, I'd show him some stuff. We're kind of, I'm teaching him along. And then every once in a while, he just shot way ahead of me.
Oh, wow.
One of those things where like, I've been working on this move for the last 3 years and I can't seem to get it right. He said, oh, you mean like this?
And he just nails it.
He nails it. Okay. And so he was a sponge. He was just like getting, from parlor magic to big magic to small magic to everything. He got a job on Broadway.
Wow.
As a production assistant,
wow.
Which, going from high school to Broadway is like not heard of.
That never happens.
So he was very excited, graduated on a Saturday. And then the next Tuesday, I come home from my grief group, ironically, and she said, sit down, I got to tell you something. I went, well, what's the matter? She said, well, Bailey is dead.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
What? What are you talking about? It was this, apparently he got, some people, some of his friends picked him up at the airport, and they were not going to go out and party and stuff, and he took something or other, and it turned out it was fentanyl.
Oh, God.
It's gone. It's just heartbreaking.
Oh, my Lord.
Much like, and all that did for me was to dredge up every memory that I had of Ryan.
Yeah.
Now, again, you can cut and paste this however you want. I'm just
no, it's fine.
talking
it's
to a
fine.
minister. So that has me reeling still.
Absolutely.
Because not only is it the immediate loss of this bright and shiny kid, but it also dragged up all the thing with Ryan. And it's been a pretty rough couple of weeks. But he was my star student, one of my star students.
Gosh.
And it was just horrible. I don't quite understand the fentanyl thing at all.
I don't fully understand it myself, but those kind of tragedies, especially when the person's that young, I mean, that is just, It just rips your heart out, and you just think, like, why? Like, what's so senseless?
Just as you did right now. Why we have no answers. All we have is questions.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the suicide. It is a whole different animal. I remember shortly after Ryan left the party, some friends, we gotta introduce you to so and so and so and so. Their son that was 35 and he died also. Really, what was the circumstance? Well, he was skiing out of bounds, and I go, wait a minute, accidental overdose and purposeful. I'm checking out.
Right.
It's miles of difference.
Yeah.
And there's a special place in hell for people that are left behind on that thing because we have no answers.
Yeah.
And I've had some wonderful successes, but this failure on the heels of Ryan's story is a little more than I can take. But I do find that performing for me is therapy. If I can walk into a group of people and I can, whip out all the tricks and all the banter back and forth, it lightens my spirit. It's therapeutic. That's all I can tell you. It's therapeutic for me to get out there and do the thing. So
Well, your book closes with a very moving tribute to your son, Ryan, who, and for those listening who may or may not know, he sadly took his own life back in 2021. And I was deeply touched by the way that you write about Ryan, the love and the pride that you feel for your son. And, you and I have talked a little bit off microphone about walking through the journey of grief, and you're talking a little bit about it right now. And it's, like you said, it's a strange journey. There's just no guidebook for living through something like this.
No.
We recently did an episode of this podcast on the book of Job in the Hebrew Bible, which is all about the need that we as humans have for being to be able to talk about our grief and give voice to our pain and the reality of it, and to do it in a safe way with people that we trust. You mentioned your grief group a minute ago, and that's so important for our capacity to heal as human beings. And I've been very touched by the ways that you've shared some of your own journey with me, and you've kind of indicated that you may be interested in sharing a little bit about that with us as well. How do you find yourself just making it from day to day? Because that's really the best any of us can do if we go through something like that.
I wish I had the answer. See, that's another one. That's another question. Questions keep popping up, and I'm searching for the answer. Doing my act and lighting people up. That's the best therapy that I've got. It's been almost 3 years. It's just as raw as it ever was,
Sure.
One foot in front of the other, But people say, I'm hanging in there. How you doing? Well, I'm hanging in there. And some days are good, some days are bad. Some hours are good, some hours are bad.
Yeah, that's real.
Grief is a strange thing. Just when you think you got it under control, it sneaks up behind you and throws the hood over.
And it comes in waves too. You'll have like good days and bad days, and then days are like, yeah, I think I'm doing all right. And then out of nowhere, it just hits you like a brick.
Yeah. So, a smell, a sound, music just killed me. The Beatles in my life, the sentiment. I've been listening to that recording for many moons. But there's all kinds of. Cat Stevens has got a bunch of different things that when I listened to them at first, a long time ago, didn't relate. Now they relate perfectly to it. But I wish there was if you do this one, stand on one foot and wave your right arm in the air, then you'll be all right. Well, there isn't one of those.
No
way around it except through it.
Yeah.
But, I miss him every day. Ryan was my Sherpa, and he would carry all the stuff upstairs and get the table set up, give the thing, take the money, and we'd go back to the hotel room and count the money and get ready to go to the next stop along the way. It was a grueling experience, but we were both into it.
Yeah.
And we were both making money and turning a lot of people out. And now I've had several trips to Europe, one to Japan, one to Australia, and teaching my style of magic to them.
And he was quite an accomplished magician himself, wasn't he?
Yeah. Basically, I gave him my act, and he did my act as well, or if not better in some places than I was. He just lit himself up when it got very exciting, and that was part of his persona. Like he was anxious, but yes, he did a fine job. I miss him every day. That's all I can tell you.
Well, Doc, I am just so sorry, and my heart goes out to you. And it's. I wish there was something that I could say that could somehow make it make sense or make it better, but there are no words other than that you are loved and this sucks. I'm so sorry. I'm glad that you're making it through the days however you need to, and frankly, that's probably the best any of us can do in that situation. And some days just being able to wake up and function is a victory in and of itself. But I know that there are a lot of people who love you a lot. I hate that you're going through this. I really, truly do.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask you, there's no elegant way for me to make this transition, so I apologize, but I'm just going to do it anyway. You talk about a number of meaningful encounters that you've had on the road, and one of them was this very interesting concept in Zen Buddhism called, and I'm going to try to not to butcher this, Doc. Is it
I can help you.
Ichigo Ichi? Ichigo
Ichi.
Ichigo Ichi?
Ichi. Ichigo Ichi. Ichi go. Ichi is the number one. Go is an encounter. or a meeting. Ichigo, Ichie. Just one moment in time. One moment in time. This moment that we're having right now will never ever again happen.
That's right.
So that's what the Japanese, it's rooted in Zen Buddhism. Serendipity kind of fits into that. This is one moment that we have together, and we could do that. We could get it all set up and do it tomorrow, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
This is the moment. These are the moments of our lives, and so to cherish those moments and to acknowledge them is an important part of Zen Buddhism, also part of my personal philosophy. Basically, you try and you don't always hit it right on the square on the head, but we need to honor every moment that we have because it's not going to happen again.
And you learned about this in Japan, is that right? While you were performing in Japan or touring in Japan?
Well, I was touring. This was my other son, Mac, helped me on this one, and we had something like 12 dates in 14 days or something. It was some rigorous, grueling schedule. And Shigeyo Fudagawa, the great coin magician from Japan, he traveled with us, and he was the interpreter. I don't know how much time you spent in Japan.
I've never been. I would love to go, but I've never had the opportunity to visit.
So he went, Shigeyo, Ichie, and I just went, I have no idea what he's talking about. So I turned to Shigeyo and I went, what is that? And that's when he carried me on to the concept of Ichi, go, one moment in time, one chance in a lifetime. It's just a way of getting through, understand that this is the moment. Maybe this next moment won't be so blue. It's a worthwhile thing. And then lay it on your life and see how are you? Am I living in the moment? Am I really here, or am I thinking about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow?
You share a couple of really wonderful stories about the concept in the book. What I was very struck by was there's also this concept of even if this moment in time seems meaningless or trivial to me, it may be impacting somebody else in ways that I don't even realize. You shared some really moving stories about how you learned that and discovered that from people who were impacted by you in ways that you didn't even know until much later on. I thought that was really very interesting.
Yeah, well, sometimes the lessons aren't interpreted right off the bat. If you're working on your life, like a lot of us should be doing, that's one of the things that I cling to is one moment in time, and let's appreciate that moment and not get too far off field one way or another.
Well, before we go, I just want to ask you really quick, as someone who is very plugged into the magic community, are there any magicians, I feel like every magician gets asked this question, but are there any magicians that are working now that you think are just really, really awesome, that inspire you, or that you enjoy seeing perform, or do you have any favorites of your own?
Well, I don't want to, that guy and that guy, that's good. Yeah, there's a dozen of them out there probably. There could be thousands of people, but there's only about 12 of them that I really admire, maybe more than a dozen. But I find, when I'm at the castle sometimes, when I've worked an entire shift and they go, hey, you're going to come into the 12:30 show? And I've been working since 8.
Oof.
If I do get wired into it, and every once in a while I'm very pleasantly surprised. I'm like, well, the guy is really good.
Yeah, sure.
But by that time, I'm kind of nodding out a little bit, and this better be good. It's like when they start snoring.
Yeah. I'm finding my bedtime is getting earlier and earlier every day.
Take it off the back end and put it in the front end.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Doc, you're a magician that I've loved watching you perform for years and years, and it's a thrill for me to get to talk to you. I just so appreciate you. It's been great to get to know you a little bit over the last couple of weeks while we've been talking, and to have you on the show is such a thrill. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us in this way. And
well, I appreciate your asking.
Doc Eason is one of the premier bar magicians in the country. He's been seen performing magic for decades at the Artisan Restaurant at the Stonebridge Inn in Snowmass Village, Colorado, Mystique Dining in historic Folsom, California, and of course, the legendary Tower Comedy Magic Bar in Snowmass, Colorado. His new magical memoir, Cocktails and Docktails, is available now from Rocky Mountain Magic at www.doceason.com. Doc Eason, thanks so much for joining us. It's been such a thrill, man.
Thanks, pal. It's been fun for me, too.
And that's the ball game, folks. I want to thank the great Doc Eason for the honor of letting me chat with him on this program. This was such an honor, such a huge thrill. Doc was so generous. I just cannot thank him enough. I also want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this conversation. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, you can check out Don't Encourage This on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and of course, you can listen on YouTube. If you would like to contact the program, you can find this show's email address at don'tencouragethispodcast.com. Until next time, I'm Mark Von Bullock. Take care, y'all.